Hi, I'm Ben McGrane, One Design Sales Manager for Hyde Sails, and we're here today and we're going to run through the tuning guide for the Mirror. So before we get into the rig tuning of the boat, there's a few things we would check. First of all, we want to make sure that everything is square. So I would start with a string line down the middle of the boat from the forestay fitting to the rudder fitting and make sure that the mast step is in the middle of the boat. We also want to make sure that this isn't twisted, so that the mast isn't twisted when we put that in the boat. It all wants to be square. We then also want to check that our shroud positions are the same distance back from the forestay, so that they're all square. And we also want to make sure that both of our shrouds are exactly the same length in order to make sure that the rig then stands vertically in the boat. So now that we've got the rig in the boat, two more checks which relate to making sure that the rig is square and also vertical in the boat. So first thing I'm going to do is sight the shrouds, which means coming back from the boat, getting down low so that I'm basically getting the two bases of the shrouds at the same level, and then sighting the wires to make sure. Now if everything's square, the wire on the far side, I shouldn't be able to see it, it should be hidden behind the wire on this side, which they're all square. So we know the rig isn't twisted. It's also a pretty good indication at this stage that the rig is vertical, but what we can also do with a tape measure on the main halyard, if I measure down to the gunnel here at the shroud, 33 centimetres there, and if I take it round onto the other side, do the same, 33 centimetres there. So I know that my rig is vertical in the boat and that the boat should behave the same on both tacks. So we're now going to check that we're tuned correctly. So I've pulled my forestay on and I've got a mark here that references the bottom of the cleat. Always a good plan to put a couple of knots in this just so it can't get accidentally uncleated on the water. Then I'm looking for a tension of 15 on the shrouds. So if I put my loose gauge on here, just give the wire a bit of a knot, and we got, yeah, just above 15 there. So we're happy with that. And then we just want to check the rake. So if we hoist up our tape measure, and we're referencing to the top of the black band, and I always put the reference written on the mast here so it's easy to remember. On the mirror it's 4.2 metres. So that's set there correctly. Happy with that. I'm going to take my tape measure to the back of the boat. And again, I'm looking for a measurement of 5050 millimetres because it's a super spar rig. If it was a Selden rig, it would be 5070 millimetres because the head crane is slightly different in design. And I'm just measuring that down to the top edge of the deck here, and that's 5050. Now if this was the first time I was setting the boat up, it'd be a bit of a work of setting your shrouds, pulling on the forestay until you get the correct tension on the front, checking the rake. If you're too far back, going up on the holes and repeating the process, or if you're too far the other way, moving the pins until you find the correct rake with the right tension. So having set up the static rig, tuned our boat to the base setting for the mirror, we're now going to move on to the jib setup, which is a really important part of how the boat will perform on the water going upwind. So the jib position, or the jib sheeting on the mirror is a fixed bullseye, so there's no changes there. So it's all relating to how we set the jib tack height and the Cunningham on the jib. So the front here is set up really well, where we've got the jib, the forestay perch system is all raised up, so we've got a single string line here, which means that it's neat with the jib. And so basically we've got lines on here of 60mm, 50mm and 40mm above the deck. Now at the moment the jib is set at 60mm above the deck, and the reason for this is when we get on the water and we start to pull the main in and pull the kicker on and we get bend in the rig, this effectively means the jib will drop down because the mast gets shorter and that eases the jib halyard. Now on the water, what we're actually looking for is for this bottom edge of the jib here to be level with the 50mm mark. Another important point to note here is this little soft shackle that is keeping the jib tack here aligned with the rest of the jib. If you don't have this, when you pull the jib sheet on, it pulls the tack of the jib backwards, and that affects the whole shaping of the jib and the sheet angle as well. There's two ways of adjusting the jib cunningham, or the jib luff tension. We can either come down on the jib cunningham, or we can go up on the jib halyard. Now, as I said before, the important thing is we're trying to get this bottom edge of the jib here level with this mark, which is 50 mil above the deck at all times. So what we tend to find is when we get out on the water and we start going at wind, pull the jib cunningham on here, bringing it down to that mark. If we've still got sag in the jib between the hanks, then it would be a case of stopping, releasing the cunningham, going slightly tighter on the halyard, and then retensioning the cunningham, all with the view of getting the height set up right here. So at the moment you can see we're too high, so release the jib cunningham, move the jib halyard, and reset the cunningham. We favour having tooth racks, halyard racks, both for the main and the jib, just because it's a very easy way of repeating the settings. And also, once you find the tooth that is right, is correct, and you tie it the same way at the top of the jib every time, you can put a little reference mark there so that you know which tooth to go on. So having set our jib cunningham up, we're now going to talk about the jib sheeting. Now we have two reference marks on our jib, an initial sheeting, and then a second mark, which basically when that just goes into the bullseye, we know that's max sheeting. But what we're really looking for on this is we're tending to look at the top tail on the jib, and when we're sailing correctly on the wind, we don't want to see that top tail being oversheeted. So if you start to see that tail on the other side is collapsing or not flowing, then we do a tiny ease on the sheet, and we're only talking about sort of 5 mil changes, very small changes. And that is the jib setup. And then beyond that, it really is just changes in kicker and cunningham tension to control the twist in the mainsail. Now you find with the mirror, with our sail designs, that you'll be starting to use a small amount of kicker quite early on. There's quite a lot of depth designed into the bottom of this main, because we have no control over the lower mast bend. So as soon as you start pulling kicker on, the mast starts moving forwards, and if you don't have this depth, the mainsail starves. So even in quite light winds, say 10 knots, we'd have just a fraction of kicker on, which gets our top tail flying at the same time as our middle tail. And then from a sheeting perspective, you're sailing upwind with the leeward part of the main sheet just slack. It's very rare to ever be sailing with full leech tension like that, because that starts to stall everything out. It's better to be slightly on the ease side than being overshooted.